Welcome to a deep dive into a really unique topic. Today, we're going to be looking at this idea of the autistic alchemist. And all of the insights for this deep dive are going to be coming from this website called Cheap ABA Adult Autism, the Autistic Alchemist, which is a really cool website with a ton of firsthand accounts and all sorts of really interesting perspectives.
Yeah, it's really cool how this website connects the idea of autism with alchemy. When most people think about alchemy, they're thinking about, medieval times and turning lead into gold. And this website really approaches it from a totally different perspective, focusing more on personal growth and transformation.
Yeah, that's kind of what caught my attention too. It's not like your typical take on autism, and I'm really interested to see how using this kind of unusual lens can help us better understand both the challenges and, more importantly, the unique strengths of autistic individuals.
Yeah, I think, a good way to think about it is that modern alchemy is all about uncovering the hidden potential within something. So it's kind of like refining the lead of everyday experiences into something more valuable. And if you apply that perspective to the autistic experience, it's almost like you can start to see those things that are often labeled as challenges, as potential tools for transformation.
Okay, I think I see where you're going with this, but how does this autistic alchemist idea actually play out in the source material?
Well, the website goes into a lot of depth about how autistic individuals often experience the world in a very different way than neurotypical individuals do. And so instead of just, listing out traits like, heightened sensitivity to patterns or thinking in symbols, the website really explores how these differences can impact daily life. So, for example, you can think about how someone who thinks in symbols might, find social interaction or communication to be a lot more complex.
That's a really good point. It's one thing to just say that, okay, someone thinks in symbols, but it's another thing entirely to consider how that might affect their ability to navigate, a world that primarily relies on verbal communication. I mean, that really adds a whole new layer of understanding to the challenges that they might face.
Exactly. And this is where the website's connection to the Emerald Tablets of Hermes becomes really fascinating.
Now, I have to admit, when I first heard about the Emerald Tablets, I pictured like, dusty scrolls and cryptic riddles. Like,
Yeah.
what do these ancient texts have to do with modern day autism?
Well, the Emerald Tablets are full of all these different ideas about like the interconnectedness of all things, the power of imagination, the importance of symbolism, and the pursuit of self-knowledge. And, while these themes might seem really abstract at first, they actually tie in beautifully with those specific autistic alchemist traits that we were just talking about.
Hold on, I think I'm starting to see the connection here. So, are you suggesting that by understanding these ancient principles, we can actually gain a deeper understanding of how autistic individuals perceive and interact with the world?
Yeah, that's exactly what the source material is suggesting. For example, one of the central themes in the Emerald Tablets is this idea of the unity of all things. And that idea really echoes the way that many autistic individuals experience a heightened sensitivity to patterns and connections. So they're often seeing links that other people might miss. And while this way of perceiving the world can be really overwhelming at times, it can also be a source of profound insight and creativity. And this connection to the Emerald Tablets isn't just some kind of, abstract philosophical idea. The website actually suggests that autistic individuals can use these ancient principles as tools for personal growth and understanding.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued. So we've been talking about these like alchemical tools, but what do they actually look like in practice? Like how can someone actually apply the wisdom of the Emerald Tablets to their own autistic experience?
Well, the website really emphasizes the importance of a few things, like tuning into intuition, deciphering symbolic language, and embracing your own unique perspective. And it kind of suggests that these practices can help autistic individuals navigate a world that often feels overwhelming or confusing.
So for example, like let's say someone on the spectrum struggles with social cues because they tend to interpret things very literally. Could this deciphering symbolic language tool help them understand those like unspoken social rules?
That's a great example. So instead of looking at this literal interpretation as a deficit, the autistic alchemist perspective encourages us to recognize the strengths that it offers. So, this individual might excel in fields like computer programming or mathematics, where, precise language and logical thinking are really highly valued.
Yeah, I'm starting to see how this framework can help us kind of shift our perspective away from seeing autism as just a set of limitations and more towards recognizing the potential that it holds. But wouldn't this approach risk overlooking the very real challenges that autistic individuals face?
That's a valid concern. And the source material is actually very careful not to romanticize autism. It acknowledges that the autistic alchemist journey isn't always going to be easy. There will be challenges, there will be moments of frustration, and there will be times when support is absolutely crucial.
So it's more about like finding a balance between acknowledging those challenges and empowering autistic individuals to harness their unique strengths.
Precisely. And this is where the website's emphasis on diversity within the autistic community becomes so important. There's no one-size-fits-all experience of autism. Yeah. It manifests differently in everyone, and it's important to recognize and respect those differences.
You've touched on this idea of diversity before, but how does Cheap ABA specifically address this?
They have a whole section on the website that's dedicated to the experiences of autistic women. This is a group that's historically been underdiagnosed and often misunderstood. And the website explores how autistic traits can actually present differently in women, which can often lead to misdiagnosis or delayed diagnosis.
That really resonates with something that you mentioned earlier, like this idea that autistic individuals might mask or camouflage their traits to kind of fit in. Could this be one of the reasons why some autistic women are diagnosed later in life?
Absolutely. The website really delves into the pressures that autistic women often face to conform to social expectations. And those pressures can make it really difficult for them to both recognize and embrace their neurodiversity.
This makes me wonder if the autistic alchemist concept could be particularly empowering for women on the spectrum. Like it's about reclaiming those unique ways of thinking and being, and seeing them not as something to hide, but as strengths to celebrate.
That's a really powerful insight. And I think it highlights how this alchemical perspective can help us move beyond those kind of simplistic labels and really appreciate the vast spectrum of autistic experiences.
Speaking of that spectrum, the website also explores a wide range of topics that go beyond just those core autistic alchemist traits. And I was particularly fascinated by their discussion of sensory sensitivities. They really delve into how autistic individuals experience the world through their senses. And they highlight both the challenges and the potential benefits of that.
Yeah, sensory sensitivities are definitely a very common experience for autistic individuals. And the website doesn't shy away from the difficulties that they can present. They talk about how hypersensitivity to things like sounds or textures or even social cues can lead to sensory overload and anxiety.
But they also emphasize that this heightened sensory awareness can also be a source of creativity and connection to the world. For example, they share the story of an autistic photographer whose heightened visual perception allowed them to capture these like breathtaking details in nature that most people would probably just miss.
Exactly. It's a great reminder that what might be considered a challenge in one context can actually be a strength in another. And it really speaks to the importance of creating environments that accommodate these diverse sensory needs.
Which leads us to another fascinating topic that the website explores, stimming. And they provide this really nuanced perspective on this behavior, which is often misunderstood, explaining that it's a natural and often very necessary coping mechanism for a lot of autistic individuals.
Yeah, it's important to remember that stimming isn't just some random meaningless behavior. It actually serves a real purpose. It can help autistic individuals manage sensory input, regulate their emotions, and even stay focused.
And the website actually challenges the societal stigma that often surrounds stimming, encouraging people to see it not as something to be suppressed, but as a form of self-expression and communication.
And that really connects back to this idea of embracing neurodiversity. It's about creating a more accepting and inclusive world where autistic individuals feel comfortable expressing themselves authentically, without fear of judgment or shame.
This whole deep dive has really highlighted how Cheap ABA goes beyond simply providing information about autism. Like, they're really fostering a sense of community and empowerment and celebrating the strengths and talents of autistic individuals.
And that's ultimately what the autistic alchemist metaphor is all about. It's about transforming those perceived weaknesses into sources of strength and creating a world where neurodiversity is not just tolerated, but truly valued.
This brings us to, I think, a really crucial aspect of the autistic alchemist concept that I'd love to kind of explore further. And it's this idea that this individual transformation can actually ripple outwards and lead to positive change on a societal level.
Ah, yes. This is where the website's discussion gets really thought-provoking. They argue that by embracing the autistic alchemist within each individual, we can actually unlock a kind of collective potential that benefits everyone.
Okay, so how do we actually go from this individual transformation to like this larger societal shift. I mean, the autistic alchemist idea sounds great for, like personal growth and everything, but how does that actually translate to a world that often seems like it's built for neurotypical minds?
Well, the website argues that autistic individuals, because they have these really unique ways of thinking and perceiving the world, they actually have a lot to offer society,
Mhm.
and that they often possess skills and talents that are either undervalued or completely overlooked in a world that tends to prioritize conformity and neurotypical norms.
So you're saying that we're basically missing out on a ton of creativity and innovation by not fully embracing neurodiversity.
Precisely. The source actually cites a bunch of different examples of autistic individuals who have made significant contributions in fields like technology and science and art and activism. They're bringing these really fresh perspectives and innovative solutions to complex challenges.
Yeah, you always hear those stories about, Silicon Valley being full of people on the spectrum, and it really makes you wonder if those companies are succeeding because of, not in spite of, the neurodiversity of their workforce.
Exactly. And it's not just limited to the tech industry either. The website highlights how autistic individuals can really bring valuable insights to pretty much any field,
Mm-hmm.
from education and healthcare to environmentalism and social justice. It's really about recognizing that different doesn't have to mean deficient.
So, like, as learners, but also as members of society, what can we actually do to contribute to this kind of collective transformation? I mean, the artistic alchemist idea is really inspiring, but it also kind of feels like a call to action.
Well, the website really stresses how important it is to create a more inclusive and accessible world for autistic individuals. It's about challenging those societal norms and expectations that really prioritize neurotypical ways of being, and creating spaces where autistic individuals can actually thrive authentically.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's not just about tolerance, right? It's
Yeah.
about genuine acceptance and like a real appreciation for the value of neurodiversity.
Right. It's about recognizing that autistic individuals are not problems to be solved,
Mm.
but rather, unique individuals with strength and perspectives to contribute.
Yeah.
And that shift in thinking, I think, is absolutely crucial to creating a world where everyone feels valued and empowered to reach their full potential.
This whole conversation has really resonated with me. I feel like I've learned so much about the autistic experience, and honestly, it's made me a lot more hopeful about the future.
Me too. The autistic alchemist metaphor is so powerful because it reminds us that within each individual, there's this potential for growth and transformation that can ultimately have a positive impact on the world around them.
This deep dive has definitely challenged me to think differently about autism and neurodiversity, and I'm really curious to see how this new knowledge will kind of change my own interactions and perspectives moving forward. Yeah.
I think that's a great takeaway for all of us. Like, how can we in our own lives foster greater understanding and acceptance and empowerment for autistic individuals? That's the question the website leaves us with, and I think it's one that's definitely worth pondering.
And for anyone listening who wants to explore these ideas even further, I highly recommend checking out the Cheap ABA website. It's honestly such a valuable resource for anyone who's interested in learning more about autism in adults.
Absolutely. It's a treasure trove of insightful articles and personal stories that will definitely challenge your assumptions and really broaden your understanding of the autistic experience.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us on this incredible deep dive, everyone. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep embracing the beautiful diversity of the human experience.